Welcome back to Crime Besties. We are here for another episode. Meg, how are you doing?
We're kicking along.
Yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there. What a week it's been, and for you too. So,
Yeah, we've had sickness go through our house. I think it's just been through everyone's houses in the last week or two. There is so much going around and so much going around the school. We had notification that there's influenza going around, and you've got a kid on camp at the minute, and apparently there's been a bit of an outbreak
like
there.
Flies.
Oh,
just been waiting for the phone call to drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours away to go and pick someone up. It was a bit funny yesterday. I had a phone call from a message from one of our friends saying they were going down to pick him up, you know, and she said, "So let me know if any of you get a phone call. I'll carpool and bring yours back too."
Well, at least that's something that might have saved you a drive.
Oh, I thought, wouldn't that be the worst if she's on her way back and you get the phone call? You're like, I'm going my way too now.
Out we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if your kid's feeling sick, though, they probably want their mum there.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? Like, entirely. It's just, I don't know. It's a hard one because, of course, the kids want to go on camp, but if you're sick, you're sick.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Oh, my goodness.
I wonder how many of the grade 4s will be at school next week.
Oh, I know. I mean, my youngest has got a bye for basketball this weekend.
Oh, that's lucky.
Which I was like, wish it was Mason for that reason.
Yeah.
But actually it's not not as bad as in terms like because he's always the earlier game.
Yeah.
That I thought, at least though Mason can sleep in on Saturday morning. We're not rushing out to get to that early game, and he can play then at like 11 o'clock, whatever he's playing. But then it's footy on Sunday, so it's like can't have early mornings. Can't sleep in. You've got the early mornings still. So yeah, we'll see who's there on Monday.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's just that time of year, isn't it? It's
It
just
is.
horrible.
Yeah.
And then I've been seeing posts from people who are like over in Europe and having beautiful times. I'm like, excuse me, that's just rude. Keep it to yourselves.
Yeah, I think one of our friends is heading to Greece very soon. I'm a bit jealous.
Unbelievable. Totally jelly. Yeah. I mean, yes, I would love to spend a day just sunning myself anywhere warm.
Wouldn't that make you feel better?
I think so. A bit of vitamin D never went astray.
Yeah, I mean, look, and the sun is out. It's out here, but it's very chilly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It's very cold.
No.
Aside from that, have you had an okay week?
Yeah, with sick ones at home and stuff, I feel like I've had like one of those weeks where I just haven't achieved anything I needed to and just running around after others. But pretty good week. Yeah, just
good.
Kicking along, as I say. It's all we can do at this time of year, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're all hanging a bit for those school holidays. Well, I know I am because I get the time off, but yeah, at least it is actually a break for me, whereas I know other people it makes it even harder.
Yeah. I mean, some things about school holidays are easier. I love not having to make a lunchbox every day.
That is my favourite thing on that last day term, and packing up the lunchboxes and putting them away.
Yes, absolutely. This morning, because I haven't been all that well, normally I do lunchboxes the night before, but I haven't been. I just haven't had any energy. And this morning only Oliver went to school. Lucas is homesick as well. And Oliver was like, "Mum, don't worry, I'll take care of my lunchbox." I'm like, I feel like I need to supervise this because otherwise it'll be like Skittles and Twisties and whatever else special things.
Nah, he'd be putting in there some pretty delish things, I reckon.
Well, so this is what he ended up with.
Yeah.
He had cucumber for brain food.
Oh, nice.
And then he had olives. Just olives. Normally I do olives and bocconcini and a cherry tomato on a stick.
That's
but
gourmet.
he just did olives because he couldn't be bothered getting the other things out. Okay, fine. A mandarin, he decided to give himself some hot dogs, like, those mini cocktail franks, which had been in the freezer for God only knows how long, but he found them. I'm like, okay, let's hope that works out all right.
Yeah.
And then he had some cheese, a few like packet things, like I don't even know what it was in the end. I'm like, that's actually not too bad.
It's not bad.
He did all right.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the energy to care really
that
much about it. So
I know I often do the whole like, I should do like be like that parent And do like a thing of like, you need to have an option of one of these or an option of one of these, kind of thing, and fill their lunch boxes, and they can fill them themselves, but they've got to meet that criteria of, and I'm like, oh God, if I had the time to fucking make
and then supervise
a fridge magnet thing with that. Exactly. Yeah. I'd love to do that and have the boys doing their own lunch boxes. But at this point in time, it's like just fucking easier for me to do it myself.
Oh, absolutely. He did make me breakfast this morning because he was making something that he thought I might like. And it was actually delicious. He made like yogurt granola bowls.
Yum.
With fresh raspberries and passion fruit like syrup. There's passion fruit in a can.
Yeah.
It was absolutely delicious. It was so nice.
When's he making my breakfast?
Yeah. So I'm like, well, maybe I need to be sick more often. I'm liking this.
Totally. Oh, my God. Chef Oliver to the rescue.
Yeah.
That's
it.
Oh, he's so cute. Oh, gosh. So good.
It's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, make it through the episode, though, you reckon?
I think I'll make it through. I just said to you before we started, though, if I have to blow my nose, I'm so sorry, but I cannot help it. I just took an antihistamine before we started because I was hoping that might dry things up.
That's not a bad idea.
So we'll see how that. I feel like it might actually be working. So, and maybe with all the talking, I don't know, the nose will stop. I don't know.
Oh, good.
We'll see how we go.
Oh, good. We can edit out nose wiping.
Oh, thanks. You're not going to start every, edit with me with a tissue shoved up my nose?
I'll try not to.
I do have a couple of shout outs for today. So we've got
good.
Donna Lesko and Michelle Walker, who've both bought us coffees in the last week or so. Thank you to everybody who does that, to everybody who's subscribed, followed, commented. We've actually had a record number of comments this week on Spotify.
Yeah.
So people who comment through the app, that really helps our show be then recommended to more people. Like I noticed we've had a few extra listeners based on that this week. So all of those things really, really help. So keep it coming. And we love the things that people are introducing. We've had people with case suggestions, people like just with comments on episodes, wanting to catch up and say hi, like do it. We love it. We absolutely love it.
So good. I know we actually had a recommendation last night. Well, not a recommendation as such, almost when are we going to? Because I said, yes, we will definitely do it because it's the Karen Reid case.
Oh, yeah.
Which yesterday came out with a not guilty verdict for her finally. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that is a great one, but we need to let the dust settle a little bit because there's going to be interviews. We're going to get information.
The
jury. The jurors over there can come out and talk as well. So that'll be interesting. But more so even really just, is there going to be any follow-up for this? Because obviously if she didn't do it, then who did?
Yeah, that's it. Where are we going from here? I think we know.
So the FBI need to get involved, surely.
Oh, for sure now. There's no excuse for them
even
not
the
to.
Judge, holy crap. So biased.
So much.
It's oh God.
Yeah.
It's not good.
It's a very interesting judicial system, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's bizarre. But anyway, we will do that. We will absolutely cover that case.
Yeah.
The other one that's been really in the media here is the mushroom lady. I know we talked about that in last week's episode.
I thought we'd have a verdict by
by now.
We may actually in reality of like when this is released, whereas
I would say
our recording of this I think we'll have one early next week. That's my gut instinct.
I think so too. So we're recording this on the 20th of June. So let's just wait and see. I'm sure by the time this comes out, we'll have a verdict.
Sure. And because that's another one that definitely will be speeding up the list to cover when that is done and dusted.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow,
That's an interesting one. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the daily listen to that one.
And I'm a little bit behind at the moment, which crazy I shouldn't be because it's all happening. It's all finishing. It's all wrapping up and everything. And then I'm like, oh, God, I want to hear what the closing arguments have been.
They've been really, really good. Like the prosecution's closing arguments were
theirs was fairly short and sweet, really, in that they were very succinct, whereas the defence one has gone on for days.
Yeah, because they're trying to introduce as much conjecture and possible what's the word I'm looking for, like
reasonable doubt
but as much as possible. But anyway, we'll see comment below, what do you think? If the verdict hasn't already come out, or if it has come out, let us know. Did they get it right?
Did they? This is it. Yeah. Oh, so interesting.
So today we're covering the case of the disappearance and presumed murder of Peter Falconio by Bradley John Murdoch. And so Peter Falconio's girlfriend was with him at the time, Joanne Lees. Do you remember when this happened? Like as in your living memory?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same. And I remember at the time, I was so fascinated by so many aspects of this case, and then revisiting it now to probably 20 years later, to research for today, it really brought back a lot of things that I thought I knew. And then now it's also raised like different ideas and different things for me. Did you find that too?
Definitely. Actually, really weirdly enough, I think for when this happened, like obviously, I remember it being a little bit, like, oh, who did it, like kind of stuff. And then but I remember that there was someone convicted, and in my mind I was coming at this of like, someone's been convicted and yep, done. And now doing all the research in it and taking into account everyone's perspectives.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to hear where you land after all that I hadn't realized just how much conjecture there was around this conviction, and that people do have opinions. I knew everyone had an opinion on her, and I knew that was a thing, but I didn't realize to what extent people have a strong opinion on this, being one way or the other, when there's been someone convicted of this. Yeah.
It's really interesting, and I feel exactly the same way. I thought the same thing. I thought, well, this is going to be one of those things where it's open and shut. I thought we were just telling a case today. Yeah, that's right. There's not going to be a huge amount to discuss about it, really. Yeah. Turns out, not quite.
Yeah, there's lots of things to be looked at here, and see what people's thoughts are and where you land. Yeah, for sure.
And it also depends, like, who you've listened to and what you've watched in relation to this.
So many of this where like there are little bits around it that you go, oh, there's that, and then you hear someone else's perspective, and then someone else and someone else's, and everyone's got a different story on it. For example, the T-shirt she wore, which seems so insignificant, and it really is at the end of the day, but the amount of people's different opinions on who made those choices is really interesting.
Yeah. All right, should we get into it?
Let's get into it.
Okay. So the case is of missing and presumed murdered backpacker Peter Falconio. So he was a British tourist, and he disappeared in a remote part of the Stewart Highway near Barrow Creek in the Northern Territory of Australia on the 14th of July in 2001. Mm-hmm. He was travelling with his girlfriend Joanne Lees at the time, and he was 28 years of age. So he came from a very sort of loving working class family. His brother has been quite prominent. One of his brothers has been quite prominent in the media. And I think he's probably a face that's recognisable to a lot of Australians and British people in particular, who were, probably the biggest consumers of all of this, even though this made worldwide news. Yeah.
And I mean, we look at it obviously from the Australian perspective. We think it's a big case here. Apparently in the UK, it's massive over there. Like they really did soak this story up. And there was a lot in the media over there.
I think part of that was because there were several backpacker incidents and murders that had happened in Australia around the same time. So there was the Port Arthur massacre that had recently taken place, and then the Childers Palace Backpackers Hostel fire, which was deliberately lit, and that's another case that we will absolutely cover. So people,
and of course Ivan Milat, had he begun?
Of course, yes, he had.
Yeah,
he had. Yeah. Ivan Milat had begun his, serial
Infamous.
killings. Another case we need. Another person
we will
we
go
need
there.
to cover. That'll be probably more than one episode. So this was a time where, I don't know, people were maybe slightly more cautious of coming to Australia to do the typical UK backpacker type of thing. That is a very well-trodden path for British people because it's easy for them to get a working visa in Australia. The conditions have changed a little bit now in terms of what type of work they have to do in order to qualify for the visa. But back then, I think they could get a visa for up to 2 years and travel around and work wherever they needed to for that time. So, it was a very so many British backpackers are around. And I mean,
Yep.
even to this day, you can go to, you know, we recently travelled to outback South Australia, and we found British backpackers everywhere working in hotels and pubs and that kind of thing. So that, you know, it's still something that people are doing to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Peter Marco Falconio was born on the 20th of September in 1972. He was the third of four sons to his mum and dad. They lived in Hepworth, West Yorkshire in England. In 1996, he started a relationship with Joanne Lees.
I met in a nightclub.
Yes, as you used to back then.
As you did
no
back
Tinder,
then.
no Tinder. Joanne Lees was born on the 25th of September in 1973. So her father was actually Australian, but she lived the first.
But she didn't know him.
She didn't know him.
No.
She lived the first of her 11 years with her mum, Jenny, and her stepfather, Vincent, I believe his name was. And then they went on to have a son, I believe. So she had a stepbrother or a half-brother. No, Vincent had a son already named Sam that he brought into the road. So, stepbrother.
Yeah.
And they lived in Huddersfield in Yorkshire in England as well. Joanne, I think, did okay at school. I don't think that, she was all that scholarly necessarily. When she finished school, she worked as a barmaid for a little while. She worked in a bacon factory.
A bacon factory.
Yep.
Yum.
But then packaging bacon. I'm like, can you imagine how bad you'd smell at the end of the day? I used to work at Subway.
Yeah.
And I would come home reeking of that bread, that disgusting Subway smell.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that you couldn't wash it out of your clothes.
No.
Oh God, no.
Just
So can you imagine the bacon fat? Or the bacon smell, you would never be able to wash
I love bacon.
that.
I've said before, I could be vegetarian as long as I can eat bacon. But to do that, no, I wouldn't eat bacon ever then.
No, I don't think it would just turn your stomach.
Yeah.
Anyway, she did that for a little while, but then she actually stumbled upon a job working for a travel agency, and she actually really developed. Well, number one, she developed really strong skills in that field, and I think she was quite well regarded. And it really developed a passion for travel in her.
Yeah.
You know, she was planning lots of other people's holidays and decided that this was probably a good time for her to start planning some holidays of her own.
Yes.
And she'd been with Peter for a while, maybe a year or something.
I think it would have been even longer. It might have been
Longer?
3 years, I want to say. Yeah.
And he went down to Brighton to study, and she ended up getting a transfer from her job in Yorkshire down to, or up to, I don't even know the geography there.
Down
to.
South. Brighton's right in the bottom.
Down to Brighton to work in the same travel agency, but down there.
So it was a serious relationship, in that they were, she was moving herself all that way to maintain that relationship, and they, lived together there, and so they were very much, on a path together. That's for sure.
They were absolutely on a path. So they decided that they were going to spend about 12 months, I think, traveling, and then the idea was that, Joanne thought that while they were in Australia, she was going to get proposed to.
Well, she sort of had this idea that they would most likely stop off on the way home and get married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least be engaged by the time they went home.
Yeah, kids and marriage were what their life plan was.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they wanted to get this year of travel out of the way first, which is completely fair because travelling with children is no joke.
Forget that.
Well, it's a very different type of holiday. You wouldn't be able to buy yourself a combi van and drive around the outback of Australia with young kids.
Yeah.
So, I think they...
especially not the combi van they got.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Which we'll get to.
A part of, I guess, this well-trodden path of UK backpackers is, travelling through Southeast Asia first. So they had gone to Thailand, Singapore, Nepal, I think, done a bit of trekking around Nepal, Singapore, Malaysia, and Cambodia. Mm-hmm. And they ended up landing in Sydney in Australia, and base themselves there. So this was a chance for them to sort of settle for a little bit, replenish some money, because they'd obviously I think by this stage they'd been travelling about 3 months throughout those other countries. And because they were allowed to work in Australia, it was a good opportunity to do so. So
always spend more than you plan to. So
always.
So yeah, it would be a good opportunity.
Expensive, even if you are backpacking.
Yes.
I think they ended up renting a little apartment or a room in an apartment while they were in Sydney for their, well, what was originally planned to be 3 months, they ended up staying about 5.
Yeah.
And Joanne worked at a Dymocks bookstore as a sales assistant and met some really, really good friends. Like one girl in particular who she really hit it off with and really became very good friends.
Yeah, she was living life in Sydney. She really enjoyed the lifestyle of what they were doing there and people she'd met. Yes.
And the type of things that they were doing in their off time.
Yeah.
So she liked, and I think this is the attraction to Sydney in particular, or anywhere along the coast. She loved that beachy lifestyle and the nice weather, nice people, very friendly people. She dabbled in the party scene when she was there. Not so much Peter. He wasn't really into that. I guess that caused maybe a little bit of tension in their relationship. And
he was keen to keep moving on the travels, and
he was happy to stay there for the 3 months and move on, whereas she really wanted to extend the stay in Sydney. But we found out later on, she was keen to extend the stay in Sydney, but we found out later on that, I was actually during the trial for this case, that she'd actually had an affair with a man by the name of Steph at the, well,
we don't even know the extent of the affair. His name was Nick, but used this pseudonym Steph because he set up an email address so that she could continue contacting him after she left Sydney without Peter knowing she was contacting a guy. It looked like she was just emailing a female friend, but that's not what the case was.
No, and they did maintain contact after they left Sydney.
Yeah.
When we say affair, I don't think it was like a torrid thing. I think it was in the party scene. She'd met this guy.
He was an Irishman. They apparently just got along very, very well.
Who can resist an Irish accent?
Absolutely. I know. Yeah, actually. From what she says of it, there was an attraction there, but she was, and look, from this, I sort of take this a little bit of she was in a relationship where, the path was marriage and kids, and she hadn't had a whole lot of other relationships prior to Peter, and neither had Pete. So I think that this was a little bit of a test of their relationship of okay, is this someone I want to explore things with, or am I just enjoying some attention from someone? Because once you get into a relationship, after a period of time, you kind of it's not new and fresh anymore. And you're in a bit of a, it's more of a routine. So I do get a feeling it was a little bit of I like this, fresh new feeling. But is it something I actually want to pursue, or am I serious with Pete? And I get the feeling that the plan was that she was I'm enjoying this, but I'm here for Pete.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree. I mean, for the fact that she left for the rest of their trip with Peter, I think, I think that says everything.
I think she enjoyed a bit of the flirt with it, I really do. I don't know there was any more to it really than that.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. I mean, I've got friends who they met at 16 and stuff, and they ended up splitting up, at one stage. And everyone was like, wait, what? They were just going to be the couple that were together forever. Yeah. And they split up for all of about 3 months and got back together. And they married kids now and solid as a rock, and you're like, well, people just need to know for sure sometimes that he's the person for me.
Yeah.
Other people are intriguing, and it's nice to feel like that, but my long-term partner is that one. So I think she was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's
I
my
don't
take
think
on
Peter ever found out about it or anything like that. So it never became a source of conflict between them.
No.
So after the 5 months, they jumped in there. So Peter, as part of towards the end of their stay in Sydney, it was his job to procure a vehicle.
He was quite knowledgeable in cars.
I think he was very handy in general. He was he was into construction work and that kind of thing. So I think he was very handy.
Yeah.
And he went to some used car market in some like car park in Sydney. I'm like, how
Yeah.
do people even find out about this? But I guess
Yeah,
backpackers
well, he
talk amongst
exactly.
one
He'd
another.
been told basically, like, because what he was doing was going through at the time was like the trading post,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
old school trading post sort of situation, like, and going and looking at these cars every weekend, like looking at multiple cars. And someone said to him, "Don't do that. Like, go to the actual like auctions, where they're all at the one time, and you can go and look at multiple cars at once, and you might find something." So, yeah, and he found this one particular one which was for sale for $3,000 and had done a massive trip already around Australia, and the owners were like, "Look, it's really reliable. We didn't have issues and things." And he did the once over it, and he really liked it and was very set on it, but walked away. And renegotiated the price and ended up getting it for $1,800.
I know, that's like significant. That's like nearly half
Oh,
price.
well done. Good work.
That's quite a few beers at the pubs along the way,
Especially
isn't
when
it?
you're backpacking. I mean, that kind of money,
Yeah.
like to be able to, manage that. So, and like he knew the car wasn't perfect, but he knew he was handy enough to, manage it kind of thing
Yeah.
and see where it goes. So, I know Joanne wasn't overly keen on the car, like, because it was bright orange combi van, that they were going to be able to sleep in if they needed to, if they had to pull over on the side of the road and have that kind of facility. But it was pretty glug, 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 glug along the road. They knew that there was going to be stretches of road where they would have to go a lot slower than the speed limit because the roads are very awful in some patches along those big highways.
I think it had a top speed of 80 kilometres an hour.
Yeah.
And you can go 110 plus
Yeah.
in the outback. So
when there's no one else around.
there's no one else around.
But the car was certainly not going to be able to do that.
No.
So she did comment that, there was a few occasions where it did backfire. So it was, a fairly rusty old combi, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was, heap of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, in the middle of, I have to say, I've done a bit of travel around these sorts of parts and through the Kimberley particularly, and I don't know if I'd want to go in it.
Yeah.
Because when you're out there, there's nothing else. Like,
I think that's the thing that people don't. It's almost unfathomable.
you've got to be
think.
out there. You've got to go out there to understand.
There is literally nothing around. You can't. I mean, it's flat.
It's not like we'll break down, but walk a few K, and you'll find a town or
like
something.
Hundreds,
No.
if not thousands of kilometres away.
Yeah, you're looking at you're dead. Yeah, it's not good.
So I think recommendations when you're driving in that area is to have at least 5 to 7 days of food and water with you at all times, because it actually literally can be that long between other people
Between towns.
potentially finding you.
Yeah.
And obviously carrying fuel on board, because again, it can be up to 1,000 Ks between fuel stops.
Yeah.
So you have to be really, really well prepared. And then a lot of the other recommendations are to drive only during daylight hours.
Oh,
because
definitely.
there is so much wildlife out there. Like when I know I'm harping back to when but it's just so much in my recent memory.
Yeah.
When we went to South Australia into the outback there, there are emus, wild emus and kangaroos, and at dusk and dawn, that's when they're out. And the amount of roadkill we saw. Now, roadkill when you're driving a big four-wheel drive is bad enough. When you're driving a fucking dinky little combi,
any car,
ruined.
in
But
a very good,
kangaroos-
four-wheel drive,
Yep.
well-equipped four-wheel drive, a kangaroo can take you out.
Absolutely.
Like-
And they are so muscular.
Yeah.
And like you think a kangaroo is like this cute little thing. No.
No.
They're huge. They're
Yeah.
muscly.
Oh,
They
yeah.
can do so much. I mean, they kill people all the time in these situations, in road accidents.
Yeah, in road accidents, yeah.
People will often come off second best.
Yeah.
So, the expanse of where they were travelling was crazy.
Yeah.
They left Sydney, headed down for Melbourne in their little combi, had a bit of a tour around Melbourne, and then headed towards South Australia.
Yep.
And they were driving, stopping at backpackers hostels and little motels and stuff along the way. Trying to keep this, as cheap as possible, I guess.
Yeah.
There were campgrounds and that kind of thing that they could stay at as well and sleep in the back of the combi. And they'd just stop every couple of days to replenish their food supply and petrol they were carrying on board, to try and get them through the next few days. So what we know is, I guess we get to the day of the incident now, really.
Yeah. Yep.
What we know is that on the evening of the 14th of July in 2001, they set off from the Barrow Creek Roadhouse. They'd been there, had a meal, and they were heading towards the Devil's Marbles. Now, during the day, they sort of headed off. Was it around 5:30 or 6 o'clock?
I think it was a little bit earlier than that.
Okay.
But a lot later than anyone was suggesting they should be.
Well, so that day they'd been to the Camel Cup races.
Yeah.
So this is something that, I mean, I wouldn't want to miss that either.
People said to them, like, wait till tomorrow because, like, stay for this. It's really, really well worth it. They had no idea it was there and that this was going to be happening. And so they were like, well, don't miss it since you're here.
Yeah, it's actually a really cool thing to watch.
Yeah, but they were just really keen to get on the road, which in these sorts of conditions in these places, that's just not safe.
And with the locals recommending them not to travel at night, they unfortunately ignored those.
Which they weren't suggesting it for anything other than, like kangaroos and emus and things like that. It was they certainly didn't have this in their minds of what actually went on.
I think the other thing that's worth noting is, like, when it gets dark, so this is outback Australia. You think of the outback and you think it's hot and toasty and, all that. And it is during the day.
During the day.
But at night, so this is in July, so this is in winter there, the temperatures can get very, very low.
Yep.
So
it's
I'm talking
freezing cold. It's really cold overnight.
So, yes, they've probably had a 35-degree day during the day when the sun's out, but overnight it can get very, very cold. And so, and also because they're so they were travelling from Alice Springs up the Stewart Highway towards Darwin to get to the Devil's Marbles. So they were heading north. They were travelling, into the darkness eventually, sort of. Maybe they left about 4:30 now that I think about it.
Yeah, I feel like it was more like 4:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
They've travelled out and, by the time darkness hits, you would be able to see literally nothing around you. It
the
would
stars
be pitch
stunning,
black.
but there is nothing else you see.
There is no light, no civilization, no road lights or anything like that. In fact, the roads are pretty not
dusty
all that
and
well maintained, and you might not even see another car for the entire night.
This is it. You may not see another single soul. Like it's so isolating out there. You have no idea until I think you get in there. I mean, we thought we were in the middle of nowhere and you weren't sometimes though, because you can't see what's out there. So we were travelling through the Kimberley one night and we didn't get as far as we hoped to get on our travels because, the road conditions can really affect you. And these are all the sorts of things you've got to take into account, that sometimes roads with weather and, can have floods come through and all sorts of things that things can hold you up. So we didn't get as far as we were hoping to. So we had to pull over on the side of the road because it was getting dark. And we're like, we've got to stop travelling and pull over. And so we pulled over to just set up campsite on the side of the road basically. And we could not see a thing. It gets dark like that. It's real quick too. So we were like, oh, we're right. We'll be right here. We'll just quickly set up camp. And as we then get to bed that night, we're laying in bed and all we could hear in the distance was, help.
Oh my God.
Let me out.
Oh, were you camped near a prison?
Yep. So my girlfriend and I are laying there we're totally going oh my God, we're going to die. Because, of course we watched Wolf Creek before we went and everything.
Oh, yeah, you're not idiots.
Oh my God, we're going to die. We didn't get any sleep that night to get back on the road the next morning. And then, as we get up to we finally got some light and opened up the tents, we realised that for probably about 200 metres off in the distance also was this prison.
Oh
yes,
my God, that is
prison.
terrifying.
But they could see us because we had we had a fire going and stuff, so they could obviously see something in the distance, and so that's why there were people yelling out.
Oh my God, that is so scary though, because you can't see, you don't know what's around.
No, you literally. So when we were there as it was getting dark, we just did not see that there was this building off in the distance. Even we thought it was just nothing.
Oh my God. Well, I'm glad you came back from that experience alive.
It's funny now, but at the time, I've never been so terrified in all my life.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Both laying there just going, Ivan Milat doesn't live around here.
You wasn't in prison then?
I'm trying to think what year it was.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, God. It was awful. Yeah. But, so you've really got to time yourself well and you've got to know what's out there. You've got to understand all those things because you can put yourself in dangerous positions just purely for wildlife, temperatures, road conditions, all those things. Beyond what they encountered, there are so many other reasons of why traveling at that time is not ideal.
Recommended
No.
at all. So according to Joanne's account, and hers is the only account we have of what actually happened, what she says happened that night, is that around 7:30 p.m. they were travelling on the Stewart Highway towards the Devil's Marbles in their orange combi van. Falconio, so Peter was driving and Joanne was in the passenger seat. And she said she was wearing just shorts and a T-shirt because it had been hot that day. They'd been at the Camel Cup races.
So we should just say too, prior to them, this exact moment, they did pull over at one stage, and they did smoke a bit of a joint between them, because they wanted to keep going to try and get further.
Wouldn't that have the opposite effect?
Yeah, it probably, that's what I would have thought. But
methamphetamine, not
yeah,
anyway.
well, there's sort of conjecture around maybe they did have some other things too. Don't know, but yeah, she definitely admitted that they'd smoked a joint, and that was to sort of help them keep going. Which, it makes you sleepy a bit. I don't know.
It's an interesting choice if that's what you're going for. But anyway.
I guess dependent on what kind of a user of that kind of stuff you are, and how it affects you. I don't know.
That's fair.
But so that had also occurred. So we're sort of looking at 7:30 at night now.
Yeah.
So, and they're still continuing along that road.
That's it. So since they'd stopped at the Barrow Creek Roadhouse, they'd noticed that there was somebody following behind them. Now, you've got to think, we're out in the middle of the outback. There are really no speed limits. People go fast and the combi couldn't. So this car was following behind them and Peter made a comment to Joanne, I just wish he'd pass us.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of different versions of events here about what kind of happened next. But one of the versions is that the person who was in the car behind them was sort of gesturing for them to pull over. The other account is that the car actually pulled up beside them and sort of made them pull over, saying that there were sparks flying out of the back of their combi. Now, you mentioned before that Joanne had stated that the combi had backfired in the past, so this wasn't necessarily something that they were...
I weren't shocked if there was something wrong with this car.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But Joanne was a little bit cautious. She didn't want Peter to pull over. But Peter was like, well, no. If
there's something wrong,
we've got to check it out.
It really shows that, different mentality of male, female in those moments.
Totally.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Joanne stayed in the car. Peter got out and walked to the back of the car and met this person. Joanne's account of it is that the banter between Peter and this person who'd gotten out seemed very friendly. They were kind of quite jovial.
Peter thanked him for,
thanks for
stopping and letting us know, so we can fix this up. And they went around to the back of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peter then comes up to Joanne in the passengers. So she was still in the passenger seat this time. He comes to the cabin of the combi and gets out his cigarettes and he asks Joanne to scooch over into the driver's seat and to start the car when he tells her to do so, because they're trying to obviously figure out what's going on with these sparks or whatever
coming out
it is
the
that
back.
this person's reported. She turns the car over a couple of times, and then on one of the times that she's turned the car over, she hears a loud bang, and it sounds like a car backfiring.
Yeah.
With that, she kind of turned to her driver's side window, and there's a man there with a gun pointing at her. So she obviously, in that split second, I think you would just put it all together and be like, oh my God,
that wasn't a backfire. That's a gun. Yep.
Holy shit,
yeah.
Where's Pete? And I think that was her first words, according to her, is where's Pete? What have you done to Pete?
Yeah.
He then tells her to turn the combi off, and she said she was basically paralysed by fear, as you would be. So he then reached over and turned the car off himself. He then ordered her to get out of the car. Now, there's several different accounts now of what actually happened, and I actually think that Joanne's account has been consistent across all of her interviews, especially her official police interviews, and then what she reported in court. Where there's been an introduction of a little bit of doubt in the story has actually been introduced by other media organisations in mistelling the story. And I feel like Joanne from the get-go was vilified by the media.
Very much so.
And I just think my heart absolutely goes out to her. So
there was
her
one particular headline and it was kind of a bit later into this, but I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened to her. And it was called, the headline was The Lindification of Joanne Lees.
Yep.
And we're talking Lindy Chamberlain.
Yeah.
You know, that whole idea of like, you know, immediately like, oh, she's the one who's done this, and jumping on her when like she's telling her story.
Yeah. I actually read that article that
Yeah.
you're talking about. And what they said was, you know, in this day and age, Lindy Chamberlain would never have been convicted because every eyewitness account said, yes, a dingo stole her baby. Like she was here, you know, there were so many eyewitness accounts, there was so much testimony, but the police just decided that Lindy was guilty and she'd done something to her baby and there's no way a dingo could have taken her baby.
Yeah.
And
that sounds really unrealistic.
yes.
But unrealistic shit happens.
Absolutely, all of the time.
Yeah.
And so in this day and age, obviously, we've got better investigative measures. And also, I think the way we treat victims is very different.
Yeah.
But even back when this happened, you know, in 2001 to Joanne and to Peter, there was still that sort of victimized, like they really, the media, it was trial by media. It really was.
And she didn't do her own self any favours either, but we can get to all of that.
We'll get to all of that.
Yeah, but definitely, the media just made a decision, but the police made a bit of a decision too. And
they did in the early days. I just feel like they didn't have the expertise really to investigate this appropriately.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that it was, you know, deliberate malice by the police.
It was almost like we know, like this person has all the answers, so they have to have the answers that actually get us a result. And when her answers weren't enough to give them a result, it was like, well, now you must be not telling us everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, that person doesn't know enough to give you the answers because she was a victim in this and traumatized.
She was so traumatized.
Yeah.
Like we'll get to this now actually. So she then is taken out of the car by this perpetrator who she assumes has killed Peter because she's calling out to him and there's no response.
Yeah.
He then tries to duct tape her mouth, gets the duct tape stuck in her hair because she was fighting the entire time so hard. He then cable tied her hands with a very particular, already pre-made cable tied handcuffs, essentially, weren't they?
Yeah.
So these were pre-made. When I say that, they were.
You can find photos of them. I'll pop some up.
Cool. They were already joined together with duct tape. And then they were ready to go. So basically,
looped around each other.
That's right. They had to just slot the hands in and pull, like it was ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah, premeditated stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, or there for some reason, isn't it?
Yep.
I don't know why you'd need to have homemade handcuffs in your car otherwise. So Joanne is fighting this perpetrator. He's trying to then bind her legs as well, but she's kicking furiously.
She fought.
So he ended up putting a bag over her head, I guess to try and, I don't know, disorient her. He couldn't kind of get her under his, get her under his will in any other way. So he's popped a bag over her head. And she says she actually doesn't know how, but she ended up in the tray of his car. So he was driving what we now know to be a Toyota. Oh, God.
I can find it. Here we go. Toyota 4-wheel drive, it just says, but with a canopy. So it had a canvas canopy.
So it was a ute, with a hard-backed ute with a canvas canopy. And what the media picked
Toyota
up
Land
on,
Cruiser.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Oh, I
a
want
1991 to 1999 white Toyota Land Cruiser.
Peter, I wonder whether it was a 79.
What does that freaking mean?
Oh, just when you've got a Land Cruiser. Oh, you would. Yeah, it's just
I
like
wouldn't
Land
get it.
Cruiser
No.
talk.
Wish I did.
Like I know what I'm talking about. I actually don't. Peter will be like, oh, God, it wouldn't be a 79. It's a blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sorry, Peter, in advance. So what the thing is there's a hard back on it. So there's no way to get from the cabin of the ute into the tray of the ute.
Yeah.
Some media reported that Joanne stated that she crawled in from the cabin of the ute, which is where she was placed, into the tray of the ute. But what she says happened is that he basically lifted up the canvas and put her into the tray. So people are like, well, which one was it? Well, no. Joanne never said that she went in from...
No.
And also, she was freaking traumatized. And
This
maybe
is the thing that never gets taken into account.
No.
Like, you know, that, yeah, like somehow I was moved from here to here, like, but she's fighting and like at the same time and trying to remember what happened.
She's got a bag over her head. She can't see, like it would be, and it's pitch black.
Yes.
Anyway, so she actually ends up escaping. And she says...
She slides herself down the back of the tray of the ute, and climbs out, and then she just bolts it.
So she, again, not knowing... I think she was able to kind of be able to see, get the...
She managed to get the bag off because her hands were bound but in front of her. And whether or not in the back of the ute... Whether they were done behind her and then in the back of the ute, she's managed to get them around, you know, pull her feet up and under and over and get them in front of her, I'm not sure. Or whether he just did bind them in front of her. Or were they behind her?
No, they were behind her until she got to the bush.
Until she got to the bush. That's right. Yeah. So, yeah, she's got them. Because I know they were behind her at some point.
But I think she's, like, been able to, like, use her shoulder or something to unhook, like, to basically get the head bag,
the bag
this
off
Hessian bag or whatever it is,
and get it off, yeah.
She then ran into absolute pitch black darkness.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of salt scrub around. It's very low level
When we're
scrub.
talking bush, we're out in the outback. That doesn't mean that it's like
bushland,
or doesn't mean that it's overgrown either. No. Like as in like it's quite sparse.
Yeah.
Like there are little bushes everywhere, and they're not tall. They're not, so it's... To hide in this would not be easy.
Especially in the pitch black, not being able to see where you're going.
Not seeing where you're going, but also knowing this person potentially could pull a light out, which does. You know, to try and hide in this is not easy. It's very barren.
Yeah.
It's not lush. It's not, you know, going to cover you.
Exactly. There's not really many places to hide, but she manages to find somewhere. So I read somewhere that she ended up only being about 35 metres back from the road, but she'd run so much further because she ran diagonally.
Yeah.
And so she thought she'd run like at a 90-degree angle and was running away, but she actually
so disorientated.
Wasn't. Of course.
Yeah.
But she ended up stumbling upon a bush.
A salt bush
that she felt like she could kind of hide behind.
She's buried herself in there and got as small as she possibly could.
Yes.
She tried to control her breathing because she knew that she was you're going to hear the smallest amount of noise because there is just nothing out there. So she said she was really careful of her breathing because she knew that if someone walked near her, they would hear her, you know, breathing, that she was like, I've got to stop. I've got to like calm, like so that I can stay quiet and not make a sound.
Imagine having the presence of mind to do that.
Oh, man.
And being so extremely terrified. When the perpetrator put her into the tray, she was asking him questions and saying things like, are you going to rape me? What happened to Peter? Did you murder Peter? And she reports that she heard dragging sounds. So once she's been sort of situated in the salt bush, she heard dragging sounds like something being dragged along the gravel, and then a torch being shone in her direction. And the perpetrator had a dog with him, and she said that the dog was looking for her and not doing an amazing job of it, but we kind of know now why. The dog so we'll say that, you know, Bradley John Murdoch was eventually charged for this. Joanne said that the gun that was pointed in her face was like a Western style gun. This person was very tall. He had a Mexican style mustache.
Like a looped down like mustache, yeah.
And he was quite imposing. She also mentioned things about his hair that the detectives actually found really fascinating. She said that his hair was kind of sparkly.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, like, he did have salt and pepper type hair, so he had quite a few greys in there that I imagine in the moonlight would have looked sparkly.
Yeah.
So she had like quite a convincing and a fairly detailed account of what had gone on.
Well, even as much as like the picture they come out with, you know, when she describes who her the perpetrator was, is like as much as like everyone looked at it and went, that could be half the people who live out this way. It was actually very accurate to the person who ended up being convicted of this.
That's right.
So as much as, like it might look like every other one out there, she was very accurate too.
Yeah.
So
she described the dog as being, she wasn't quite sure, but she said it had spots, and she said maybe like a cattle type dog, but then...
There's a few issues with the dog though, which we can get to, but one being that when she was asked that question, the police officer said to her, oh, like that one over there, and pointed to a particular type of dog, which wasn't the kind of dog that John Murdoch had, and she just went, yeah, like that, like kind of like that. Which I mean, in those sort of moments, it had spots, but she was like, yeah, kind of like that, like I guess, and it might, that's she might have been thinking that he was inferring to the size of that dog, not the breed of the dog, or the colouring, or I mean, there's a lot of combinations that make up a kind of dog. So whether in the moment she's gone, it was kind of that size, where he's taken it as, that exact breed, that exact looking dog. Yeah. So it's that throws off a few things, I think, the dog, but
it does, but I don't think that can really be used in evidence, because she was inappropriately, suggested in places. So it wasn't great policing. No.
In that moment.
We also know that Bradley Murdoch had a Dalmatian cross dog, which is not really a cattle
not the kind of dog you normally see out that way.
Not in the outback. They're not known for being good hunters or trackers or anything like that.
They're just brightest of dogs.
No, I think they're
gorgeous.
They're not known, absolutely gorgeous, but not known for their intelligence or their tracking abilities. So the fact that the dog didn't find Joanne,
it's not shocking.
Isn't shocking. And I think that just goes even further to the fact that this was him.
Yeah, well, apparently other people also commented saying like his dog was really dumb. So he probably would have just left it in the car, and that wouldn't have even bothered getting it out in some ways, because it wouldn't have done any good.
Apparently, when Murdoch was looking for Joanne with the torch, he did shine the torch near the bush that she was hiding behind, and he didn't see her.
Oh, terrifying.
How that happened, I do not even know. Like she, in some ways, is just so lucky for that sequence of events. The torch then goes. She hears a car turn on, and from the sound of it, she knows it's their combi van that's being turned on and being moved. The combi then is turned off, so she hears it drive away from her north, so the way they were travelling, and then she doesn't hear anything, and then she hears somebody coming back and another car turning on, and then using the headlights, like moving the car so that the headlights of the car look out to where she is. Obviously, this perpetrator is looking for her again. He finds nothing, and he drives away.
Eventually he drives away. He sort of like fakes it a little bit and waits for it to come out. He turns everything off as if he's disappeared, but he hadn't, to see if he can kind of I think coax her out, sort of to kind of go, she thinks I've gone, she'll walk out. Yeah. But she didn't. She just stayed there. And I to be honest, she stayed there and waited until she heard the noise of another car coming by.
Well, because she heard the noise of another car, and she thought, well, that might be somebody who's in cahoots with him, or might be him again. So she actually waited until she heard the sound of a road train,
because she knew then it would be different. It was a different vehicle and like road trains, if you haven't seen one, they are huge and they make a lot of noise. There is no mistaking them. And so she's obviously experienced enough in terms of these roads of what she's been on to understand what that would be.
Yes.
And there's plenty of them that run up down that route. And so to hear one of those, she could have very easily known that was what it was. And the lights coming off of them as well. There's a lot of lights.
They're very well lit.
Because for the reason of they are very dangerous. They're not easy to stop. They're a bit like a real train, like on train tracks, that they are so heavy that to put a brake on and slam brakes on and stop isn't quite that easy. They just keep ploughing through. Yeah. So they do need to have, break down, using gears, etc. to be able to do that. So
she says that she was waiting in that bush for about 4 hours before the road train came. And so we're sort of heading into, was it about 2:00 in the morning, I think?
I think 1 o'clock-ish. Yeah.
So she's run out onto the road, flagged down. The driver of the train saw her
Yeah.
and alerted his co-driver who was asleep in the cabin.
Well, he
behind.
actually says he saw something and didn't know what it was. He actually, it wasn't even to the point like he saw a woman. He was like, there's some figure. He was, because he's so high up off the road too, that he saw this thing on the road that he's like, oh my God, like what the hell is that? And did slam the brakes on and broke down. And he actually assumed that he had driven over whatever it was that had come out onto the road. So he jumped out to think, and he immediately then looked under the truck because he was like, I haven't been able to stop in time. I've run over it.
It took him a kilometre to stop.
Yeah, that's how long it takes.
A kilometre to come to a complete stop.
Yeah.
By that stage, Joanne was running towards him.
Yeah.
And yelling out towards him. He sounds like the loveliest bloke.
But
if you were going to stop any road train,
this is the guy to have had jump out of that truck because I have absolute
Rodney?
Vince. There was there's two.
Yeah, so
there's obviously Vince was Vince was the one driving.
Oh, okay.
Rodney was asleep. So you always drive with two because they drive in shifts and they don't stop really. Like they just keep going. Rodney's asleep in the canopy at the back. We actually don't know his surname. Vince has been public and so we do know his surname, but I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Same.
But so Vince was he's interviewed in a number of places. God, so lovely. I remember like thinking like at the time going, oh God, Paul, Joanne Lees, like what's she going to get coming out of this truck now? I'd be terrified.
Same.
But then when I saw him interviewed, I was like, oh my God, what a beautiful man. Yeah. And even it sounds to me like not that I've seen Rodney, but he was very similar, ilk of they're obviously very similar men. Just really, they were so lovely to her. To the point where I kind of am a bit concerned for preserving evidence of the scene, unfortunately.
They thought they were doing the right thing.
Absolutely, because they saw he looked under the truck to try and find whatever hell he'd run over, and he said all of a sudden across from the other side of the truck, this body appeared and ran towards him under the truck. So you can literally walk under them; they're that high up. And she did. She came from underneath to him and just fell into him. She was terrified. So he just was like, oh my God, like this random woman out in the middle of nowhere. What the hell? And he's taken one look at her and known that there's something awful has happened. She's got cuts and bruises all over her. And she is bleeding. Her knees are all scratched up and her legs and everything. And then her hands are bound in front of her. And at this point, Rodney is woken by the noise and things of what's going out, and he comes out as well. So they cut off her the ties around her arms, and then they also take off of her the duct tape that had got. It wasn't over her mouth because he couldn't get it on her because she kept moving so much, but it was stuck around her neck, and it was on so tight that he had to get his little finger in there to try and get it so he didn't cut her. And because he's even said this, Rodney, he was like, I was so scared I was going to create more injuries to this poor woman who'd clearly been through hell.
There was duct tape in her hair too.
Yeah.
There was just so much going on.
Yeah.
They ended up driving her to the Barra Creek hotel.
So there's absolutely no service, by the way, out where they were. So there wasn't like they could just jump on a radio or anything and contact somebody. No. They had to get to the nearest little town.
Well, I think Barra Creek has a population of 11 people at the minute. I think it had a population of 20 back then.
Yeah.
So it's barely a hamlet, really.
Yeah.
But it was the nearest sort of waypoint. So they've taken Joanne there and called the Alice Springs police.
Who hung up on them?
Twice. Because they thought it was a joke.
Because it didn't sound believable.
Anyway, they eventually managed to convince them that this was real, and so they sent detectives out.
The next day.
Yes.
So early the next morning. But they weren't exactly on foot immediately. No. They arrived at about 4:30 in the morning.
Yes.
So we're talking, they rang them, I believe the contact was made at about 1:30 in the morning.
1:30, yeah.
And so they weren't rushing out their kind of stuff from their nearest point. They didn't start the search out to the actual site until 7:30 in the morning.
I guess they needed daylight. I can kind of understand that. They've come to Barra Creek. They
would have been daylight at 4:30. It would have been enough light at 4:30.
They've listened to Joanne's story, and then they've obviously had to go out and find whatever it is that they were looking for, which I guess they didn't really know. But even that this was all botched. I can kind of understand the time between 1:30 and 4:30 for them to get there, because they had to go from Alice Springs to Barra Creek, which is 300 kilometres. That's a long way to go.
Yeah.
So I can understand the time there. I don't really understand why they didn't go out and secure the scene straight away, even if they couldn't process anything.
Yeah.
But then the other thing was, though, Joanne wasn't 100% sure exactly where it all took place, but the truck drivers, they knew. They would travel up and down there they basically knew exactly where they'd picked her up from.
Yep.
So, yeah, that I find odd.
Yeah. And we should say too that when they obviously got to Barrow Creek, they cleaned her down, like they cleaned her off, which again comes into play in terms of, I guess, the fact of like that the police at this point, when they get out to the scene and they see her, they don't find a lot of evidence of anything of these things because, well, yeah, potentially any DNA or anything of like that sort of thing, or blood maybe from the perpetrator is potentially being washed off in that process of them doing that. That's what I mean by like when I said they were so lovely, these guys, but that I don't know that they preserved a scene, unfortunately. So
no, I think they were trying to care for her and washing all the blood off her and all of that kind of stuff. But I think I'm sure evidence was lost in that, unfortunately, because black people like then really clutched to the fact of like, oh well, there was no evidence on her. There was, that we find very minimal. That on her there was no, if she was fighting so much and all this sort of thing and kicking around, like surely he touched her and surely he left, hair or something on her. But if it could have been washed off, in that process. So and also she'd spent 4 hours in the freezing cold bush.
Yeah.
God only knows what actually happened to any evidence that was on her. Would have been potentially wiped off. Who knows?
Yeah.
So, they start to process the scene. They interview Joanne and trying to figure out what happened. Yep. What they found when they got to the scene were 3 small pools of blood.
Yeah. Around about 250 mils of blood.
Yeah, which, I mean, look, it's not an insignificant amount, but I guess if you're thinking somebody's been shot, that seems like not a lot of blood, especially if they've been shot in the head.
But to me, if they're shot, and then you can maybe answer this, if they've been shot, dead, one shot, like in the close range kind of shot that would have happened,
absolutely,
would that mean there's no blood pumping around the body?
Absolutely.
So not a lot of blood maybe would be present.
And also, like if the bullet hadn't exited his body, like there's no exit wound. Then there's not a lot of space for blood to be coming out either. And then how quickly he got him into the back of his ute as well.
Because my other thought was too, in terms of the blood evidence. So, okay, yes, he had a gun when he came to the door, like, to her. But is there anything saying that it was definitely a gunshot? I mean, if you've never heard a gunshot before, which Joanne Lees had not, and she mistakenly thought it was even the combi backfiring. I mean, we're only concluding that we are assuming there was a gunshot. Could it have been that he was smacked over the head with something and the bang was actually that then hitting the combi, like say he had, I don't know, a plank of wood or something, and he smacked him that hard over the head and that, killed him. But that may not leave then an injury. It's crushed the skull, what have you, but it may not include much blood. Yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, we don't know because to this day, I guess it's worth noting that Peter's body has never been found.
Yeah.
So we don't actually know what happened.
What his cause of death was. That, to me, that we're still leaving ourselves open here of like...
You can still fire a gun up in the air if you want a gunshot sound to be heard or whatever. I mean, I don't know. But... you could also, I guess, shoot down into somebody's body potentially. Oh,
true. I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, and he was a tall man. He could have definitely done that.
And then not have as much blood then necessarily. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah, there's so many.
There's so many possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say there wasn't enough blood to think that he'd been killed. But I think there's plenty of reasons to think that. I don't think that's the thing. Yeah.
DNA testing was done on the blood, and it was definitely Peter Falconio's blood that they found on the side of the road.
And if you do lose 250 mils of blood, I mean, it's significant. Like it's a
lot of blood. I mean,
it'd be enough to say that person could be dead. Like it's not like we're saying like, oh, there was only a couple of drops. There's no way that person would be dead from that. Like, yeah.
They found the combi had been like driven up the road and parked off to the side of the road.
About 80 metres into the scrub it had been moved in there, which is a bit of an odd one.
But still visible
from
the road.
Yeah. yeah, when you could have moved it probably 100 kilometres into the there and you still would have seen it.
The bright orange combi.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there was the pool of blood. And the other thing that was noted was that they found Joanne Lees's footprints in that bush where she'd hidden for like 4 hours. So that's, she's been there in one spot, really putting her feet in there, planting herself for safety. So not shocked that, you would find footprints there. However, they noted that there were no other footprints that they found in the scene where they were like, oh, if someone was searching around that space, you'd see footprints of the dog or this person walking around. Now, the thing is, you don't also find Joanne Lee's footprints of her running towards this salt bush either. So the dust and everything out there, a bit of a wind could have come through and it could have blown away any of those footprints. Yeah, they would have been there when you first walked there, but it wouldn't take much for them to disappear. So yes,
to me that's a moot point. Like if Joanne's footprints weren't there either, like why is that even a point?
Because people latch onto the fact that his footprints weren't there and the dog's footprints weren't there. Well, neither were Joanne's. The only ones that Joanne's were found were where she planted her feet for 4 hours. Yeah. Yes, they would have been dug into that ground. Yes, of course they were there. Yeah. The others not being there does not indicate that this didn't happen and that she's telling any lies.
Yeah.
I think it actually backs her story that she hid there for a very long time. Yeah. And why would you do that if no one was chasing you? Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So the police are processing the scene, I guess. And Joanne, because all of her belongings, everything she had was in that combi and it was now a crime scene.
Yeah.
She had no access to any of her things. And I'm talking no money, like her bag, her wallet, everything. Yep. Everything she owned. Every worldly possession she had in Australia was in that van.
Yeah.
Clothes, toiletries, everything. So the police organised for her to be able to go and do some shopping so that she could get just, some essentials.
Yeah.
And she went and bought what she needed with a police officer.
So two things on it because I know where you're getting with it. With one of those things, though, that I'll just say beforehand was that she was photographed doing that. And even in the media was then like, oh, she's out shopping when her boyfriend's missing. Hello, freaking hell, she needed things. What? There wasn't many places to go shopping where she, they were out in the middle of nowhere. So she'd gone shopping to go and get things because she desperately needed something.
Even have a toothbrush.
She needed things. I mean, it just blows my mind how cruel the media were.
Agreed.
Yeah.
She bought some clothes. Now, I'm going to just put it out there and assume that there wasn't a lot in her size to choose from. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt here because one of the things she chose to buy was this pink cheeky monkey T-shirt that has now become infamous.
On the front of it, I'll put a photo up. It says, it said cheeky monkey right across the chest of it. And this is the T-shirt that she, chooses. I'll put in, chooses to wear.
She did choose to wear it. She had more than one T-shirt.
She did have more than one. And look, and apparently, according to the lead investigator for this, who I'm going to get her name right, Colleen Gwen. Now, I should say, she came on board as the lead investigator about 6 months into this.
Yes.
But she was part of the team from the get-go. Now, apparently she remembers even, though, at the time when they were walking out to this media press, turning to Joanne Lees and saying to her, are you sure you want to wear that T-shirt? And she just went, yeah, I'm wearing this. She's like, okay.
Apparently someone said to her, I've got a black T-shirt you can borrow. And she was like, no, this is fine.
Yeah. Which, I mean, in her, I in some ways I get it in that she was probably like, what are you talking about? What's wrong with my T-shirt? She wasn't thinking straight. She was not in any way, I don't know.
But then wouldn't you be like, oh, well, if they're telling me not to wear this T-shirt, fine.
But I don't know how forceful they were with it. You know what I mean? I'm not sure I know it was definitely mentioned.
Yeah.
But to what degree, I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is where that Colleen Gwen, she actually says she uses it now in her teachings of young up and coming constables and things of media and how that can be portrayed, and that they are far more vigilant in maybe helping people choose appropriate clothing for those kind of events, because it can really change the spin the media have on a case where the police are wanting to take it in a completely different way. Yeah. So they apparently do have better protocols around that now.
Yep.
I mean, not that you're going to be telling someone not to be who they are either. I have an issue with people dictating what other people wear.
Oh,
So
I fully agree with that. I fully agree with that. But I also think the optics of that, I can see why people took that the wrong way.
Yeah, but she was a 27-year-old girl. I don't know. I see it from both perspectives. Totally.
Same. Her partner's missing. She probably was like, who gives a fuck
Who
what
gives a
t-shirt
shit
I'm
on what t-shirt I'm wearing?
It doesn't actually matter.
No, and I think that's, I mean, unfortunately, I think that's where her mindset was at.
Yeah, probably.
And in no way, shape or form did she have in her mind, oh, the media might look at me and think about me in a certain way for wearing this t-shirt.
Although the media had already started to hound her and write not very nice things about her.
It's awful.
Horrid. So by this stage, Paul Falconio, Peter's brother, had come out to, well, I guess as almost as a bit of a family spokesperson and to support Joanne.
Yeah.
And when they fronted this press conference, the media thought they were going to hear from Joanne, but I mean, I guess they did, but it was Paul who read a statement from Joanne.
Yeah.
The media were asking Joanne lots of different types of questions, and in a lot of the things that I've read, and you can watch these press conferences on YouTube, so have a look and see what you think. But there's some media reports where she's like looking down her nose at people, and, you know, she's very aloof and not engaged. I mean, I think she was still in shock at this point. Yeah. I think she was so traumatized by the events that she'd been through. She just had to get through that. Mm-hmm. She was participating in this, you know, media circus essentially to try and find what had happened to Peter, whether anybody could come forward with any information or whether anybody knew anything. She was doing her best.
But at the same time as, like, there's the media and how they're treating her, but there's also how the police were treating her, which I think she was already feeling she wasn't being treated like a victim. She was being treated like a potential perpetrator. And so she was already defensive of, like, by how the police were treating her. And then to walk out into the media and feel like, well, if the police are treating me this way, am I being placed in a position of, like, you know, being put up for this, you know, and now there's cameras at me and I'm not used to that. I can only imagine how she would be feeling.
Oh,
I mean,
horrible. But if the police thought she was involved, what did they think had happened?
I know.
Like, that nothing's come out about that. As in, their theory, I think, very quickly did turn to what eventually went to trial, or how it eventually went to trial. But I just can't, I mean, I understand you've got to look at the people closest to the victim first. I do understand that. But then you've got in front of you a very traumatized
petite woman,
little woman.
And we don't have a body. Like, what on earth could she have done with a body on her own? Like, yeah, how are you concluding, oh, well, there's no one else out there. It's got to have been her who did this.
What's her motive?
What? Well, their only motive that they were sort of, I guess, could put forward was the fact that there was this potentially having this affair with someone in Sydney. Yeah. Because at this point she does continue to, you know, communicate with this person. They do discover that there's emails between this person and her at this point. So yeah, Pete's missing, but she's still communicating with this bloke. And saying things like, hey, let's catch up. You know, but I mean, yeah, let's catch up. Like, I mean, you've been through trauma. Like, geez, someone want to be there for you who's been a friend to you. Like, that doesn't sound inappropriate in some ways to me either.
She was also emailing other friends saying exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
So, like, female friends.
They really sort of spun this of being like, you know, oh, they were trying to, like, you know, rendezvous. Like, you know, like, it's like, well, no, this is her seeking for actual support from actual friends, which the police were not being supportive. You can see some of the recordings of the video, the interviews with Joanne, and they do speak to her atrociously. It's really not good. Like,
and I'm not just talking early days either. I can almost, in a way, if they're trying to eliminate her, I can kind of understand, you know, they've got a job to do and they need to get to the bottom of what's happened. But I'm talking months later when they're re-interviewing her and trying to confirm different details. The way they speak to her is absolutely horrible. When that lead investigator then takes over, though, the whole tone does change of the investigation. And
she said she believed Joanne from the get-go. Like, so she, as I say, she was in the team who was there on the first day as a uniformed police officer. It was just that within the first 6 months of this, she happened to get a promotion, and this became her case, and she was lead investigator. So as much as she was now taking over, and she said she didn't really even realise it as the uniformed police officer in this case. She didn't realise how bad it was. Until she moved into that leadership role, that she went, holy crap, this has not been done well.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting to see how, like, from that different perspective of even the role in the case, to have that whole new, I guess, landscape in front of her of how this case should be dealt with.
Fully agree.
And unfortunately, so far into it, I mean, 6 months down the track of this, you know, trying to find someone.
Well, Joanne had already gone back to the UK by the time she took over the case. And so she went over to the UK to formally interview Joanne for herself. And she said when she first met with Joanne back in the UK, Joanne was very standoffish, but she was so burnt by the media and previous interactions with the police that it took a while for her to come around, but eventually she did. And I think it was that confidence that she was being believed and that she was also a victim in this, and this was a horrific thing for her to have to go through. Yeah,
because what they also do is not long after this occurrence, the police take her out to the scene to reenact it, which on the surface... oh, good. No, you're right.
Blow my nose while I'm here. Sorry.
No, you're right. You're good?
Yep.
Yeah, so on the surface, I can understand wanting to do that because you can get a hell of a lot of information out of doing a reenactment of what took place to be able to understand what they're looking for, and, you know, and the possibility it might spark something for her that she remembers being in that position, you know, that might bring out more information for them. However, how fucking traumatizing is that so soon after going through it as well? I don't know if I could do that.
I just don't think there was any consideration from.
And yeah, this is the other thing. It's the way they speak to her during it. I think if you were going to do it and it was, you know, you were like, right, we really need to do is, unfortunately, this is how we think we might be able to get some more information. We're going to do this. You need to do that with a real lens of, we're dealing with someone who's highly traumatized. We're going to need to step carefully. She's going to need to take as much time as she needs, you know, and these two blokes particularly who are running her through this, oh my God. There's at one point where she's in the car explaining how he moved her across the seat or something. And so he's in her face pretending to be the perpetrator. And he's quite a big, imposing bloke. And he's like leaning over her going, well, did you turn the car off or did he turn the car off? And she's like, I can't remember if I know he said that, but I can't remember if I did it or if he did it. And so she's like frustrated with herself for not being able to remember. He's getting frustrated with her. And then she like leans across the car a bit more and she starts talking more about what happened, and she just can't, and she breaks down, leans forward and bursts into tears, like, and she's just absolutely beside herself. And you see these two guys in the camera shot, rolling their eyes, like going,
they're exasperated by it.
Here we go again. She's crying again. Fuck me. Like, yeah. She's crying.
Also, I think if I had someone that imposing, and also like even dealing, if you've never dealt with the police before, that's intimidating as well.
Absolutely.
If you had this police officer in your face and he was yelling at you basically like, what was it? Well, did you do this or did he do this? I'd be like, I don't know. Like, I'd be so overwhelmed in that moment. And that's without the trauma around it as well. The whole thought,
like, you know, you want to say the right thing because you want to be accurate. You want to say what was true. You don't want to say something that was, you know, that wasn't accurate. And like, oh God, to have them pressuring you that you're getting it right. Awful. You know what that Colleen Gwen did do as well when she first got off, like given this case as hers? One thing that she did was she took herself out there at a similar time of night on her own, put herself in that salt bush where Joanne had hid for 4 hours, and really put herself in her shoes, like literally put herself in those where her shoes were in that salt bush to see how that would feel. And she said, I didn't have someone chasing me. I didn't have John Murdoch looking for me with a torch, but holy shit, it wasn't comfortable and was definitely really, traumatic just sitting there like that. Because there is the strength in that girl to sit through that and get through that. She had a whole new respect for her.
She said that when she did that, the only thing she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how deathly silent it is.
Yeah.
There is no other sound.
No.
Oh, God.
Awful.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, poor police work in those initial weeks in terms of securing the scene, which they didn't do well enough, because even by the time they did bring in Indigenous trackers from the area who are very good at looking for people and finding, to even find the body, let alone the person who perpetrated this, that was something they definitely could have used at that point. But by the time they even got them there were that many police officers who'd walked around that scene that even if there were footprints of someone's to track, they had gone at that point. So they had just ballsed it up, I think, from the get-go in that sense of just securing a scene, let alone how they dealt with the victim.
Yep. Agreed.
Ugh, awful.
So in trying to identify the perpetrator, the police, started compiling a list of different suspects. And what's the lead detective's name?
Colleen.
When Colleen took over the case, she says she asked for the top 5, top 10 suspects, and that's where she was going to start.
Yeah.
Eliminate one by one. And she said Bradley John Murdoch was number 2 or number 3 on that list for various different reasons. Physically, he kind of matched the description. He was known to have been in Alice Springs at the time, which was a little bit unusual for him because generally he travelled. So, I mean, it depended. He did have runs through Alice Springs, but not always. He actually lived in Broome in WA, and would more often than not travel down to Adelaide.
Mm-hmm. He would do a drug run from Adelaide to Darwin quite regularly too.
Yeah. He was. I mean, he had prior convictions for certain things.
Yes.
Which I've got. Do you want to get into that now?
Yeah, we can talk about who he is before we came across him in this.
Bradley John Murdoch was born on the 19th of Feb in 1958. He is currently serving life imprisonment for the murder of Peter Falconio.
Is it 28 years?
He'll be eligible for parole in 2032.
Right.
Which is a little too soon for my liking.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah.
Although I believe he's got throat cancer and I think he's not meant to survive the year.
Oh, really?
Yep. It
got that'd be
announced
interesting.
About a couple of months ago. They don't think he'll survive 2025. So let's just hope that is true.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, his previous criminal charges. In 1980, when he was aged 21, he received a suspended sentence after being convicted of causing death by dangerous driving after hitting a motorcyclist in Port Prairie in South Australia. So reckless driving. He was doing something stupid. I think he might have been intoxicated at the time or under the influence at the time of hitting and killing the motorcyclist.
Mm-hmm.
In November in 1995, so 15 years after that incident, he started a 21-month imprisonment for the August 1995 incident where he was drunk and he shot at people who were celebrating an Indigenous AFL round of football in Fitzroy Crossing in the Kimberley region of WA.
Mm-hmm.
He was released after 15 months.
Yeah. So he displayed white supremacist views on a number of things. He actually has tattoos as well that represent those.
Yeah, absolutely.
He apparently these views really became quite extreme once following the 1992 Mabo decision.
Mm-hmm.
So that really triggered that for him, and he definitely got some real racist views. He moved around that top end area though in the communities from about the late 90s. And he was living in Derby, which I've been to Derby and not much there. But he was running he was driving a train, a road train. He was driving those, but in that he was running narcotics at the same time as doing that job. So he would find any way possible to sort of, I think, slip in his bit of his criminal activities within working a proper job or whatever. And that was when he sort of settled in Broome at that point. So he was just in on everything. Like,
yeah, he was a really, I mean, he's not a good bloke. Some might say piece of shit.
Oh, some might. Yeah, very, very much. I mean, prior to his conviction of this, he was definitely known as a violent man, and known for, criminal activity. So
and domestic violence. So he was married. He married a woman named Diane, I think in 1980.
Yep.
They had a son in 1984 and they ended up separating because of his extreme perpetration of domestic violence against Diane and I believe their son.
And you know what date it was that they separated?
Yeah, it was on the 14th of July, which is the same day that
Peter Falconio went missing, disappeared, presumed dead.
Why was he?
So that's is that a trigger point for him of like, because apparently, like the separation with his wife, he was not happy about the separation.
He wasn't okay with it.
No, not at all.
He was not okay with it. She ended up having to escape him basically.
Yes. Yeah.
And I believe they hid for a while. He didn't see his son for years.
Oh, because actually that really pissed me off. I was watching that. There's a documentary called Murders in the Outback. No, the Outback Murders. No, which one is it?
It is called Murder
in the Outback.
Murder in the
Outback. And so there's this particular. He's an ex lawyer who has represented many of the underworld and all that sort of thing. He's a defence lawyer from way back. And there's a moment in it where he says, I just really want to help Peter Bradley get out of jail so he can be with his son. Sorry, what? No, that kid could probably really do better, like probably not being around him, I think.
I think he's probably doing all right with his mum.
Yeah.
Turns out.
Yeah, I don't know. Yes. So Andrew Fraser, the lawyer who he has a very strong view that Bradley Murdoch did not commit this. He thinks that there's some holes in this conviction, which many people do side with that, and he's got a few very good points to be honest. In terms of like some aspects of this case that I think maybe they did get wrong, would add up in total. Don't know about that, but anyway, we can get to all of those things. But so he was a very well-known defence lawyer for a very long time. As I say, represented in Melbourne, he represented many of our underworld in court. But he got caught up himself in some trouble, and he was done for importing cocaine in artworks and stuff. They used to stash it behind and everything.
The paintings,
and he says that he remembers the day that he became a criminal was that he was at the Formula One racing, the first Formula One racing in Adelaide, and someone offered him a bit of cocaine, and he had some and quite liked it, and that was his demise from there. Yeah, okay. Unfortunately, he became very much addicted, and then got into importing it because thought, well, I've got to feed this habit in terms of money wise, and that can pay for it.
Cocaine
so
ain't cheap.
Ain't cheap even for a lawyer. So he ended up spending some time in jail, and he's now obviously out of jail, but he's had his license for being able to be a lawyer anymore has been revoked.
A convicted felon.
Yeah, so he can't be a lawyer anymore. But he still heads up a crew of other lawyers because he obviously has skills in this, but he just can't actually practice. So he has other lawyers in a team of that he works with that are really pushing and really hard trying to get this case re-looked at. But we can Bradley Murdoch swears to this day that he is innocent, but why wouldn't he?
Well, exactly. What's he got to lose? Aside from, we'll get to that in a sec too. So he was also in 2003 charged with 2 counts of rape against a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Oh, what the actual fuck. Like, what a total and utter piece of shit.
He was acquitted of it. Now, there is a couple of ideas here. Actually, Andrew Rule that I was listening to who explained that.
Love Andrew Rule.
Love him. But he believes that and has had, little birdies in his ear, as he tends to have, who potentially think that his arrest for that was more so to get a
I have
DNA
heard this.
sample on file, because he was acquitted of it.
Yeah.
So
I have heard that too.
Yeah.
I just think he's a total piece of shit, and where there's smoke, there's fire in this case. Because didn't he attempt to abduct her mother or something as well? And then
there was a mother and daughter that he abducted, and he
Yeah.
had them apparently in the back of his ute
Yeah.
for like days on end, and was like just raping them and putting them back in the ute and raping them. And
So that wasn't this case. That
Yep.
was this case. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that happened. I don't know.
I don't know how he was acquitted of it. So the
And
only
why wasn't he charged with the rape of the mother?
Yeah, he raped apparently both of them, and
Yeah.
but apparently but I don't know how he got off that. I really don't, but he did. I don't understand that at all, and so the only sense I can make of it is that
they needed his DNA.
they needed
to
his
test
DNA, and so
against.
they got him without enough evidence. They,
But
you know what I mean?
what I understand though is from Colleen is that because they were sort of, as they were investigating and eliminating other suspects, it became more and more clear that he was probably the perpetrator of this crime. Mm-hmm. And they found out through the grapevine that Bradley and his brother were not talking. They were not in good
So one of the
standing.
main people who sort of a person came forward who was an ex business colleague of his. I want to call it drug runners, who he'd got into trouble with the law, as these things happen.
Yeah.
And so he had said, well, to try and get himself a bit of a lesser sentence, I've got some information for you. If I give you that, will you give me a lesser sentence? So, and what he came out with was basically saying that he believed fairly strongly that Bradley Murdoch was the culprit of the stuff that went on in Barrow Creek, and with Peter Falconio, due to the fact that of his behaviour at the time, he'd acted really oddly. He believed that the kidnapping and things of those women was actually him hiding out to try and avoid getting caught up with the stuff that was going on with.
Changed his appearance.
It changed his appearance. There's
Shaved
all
his
these things that he
mustache
said.
off. He changed the appearance of his car.
Yeah, which he tended to do a fair bit anyway in
'cause
terms
he
of
was
his
a
drug
runner.
runs.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah.
But apparently he stopped doing a lot of that as well because he didn't want to become conspicuous in any way.
Yes. So this guy had that information. So that was when the cops went, okay, well, we've got to look at him.
Yeah.
And that's, when they were like, right, well,
Let's
we
go
need to get some
I think
DNA.
His name was Barry, the brother?
Oh, no, I don't know. He had
Bruce,
two brothers,
Barry?
but I don't know
Anyway,
which one.
He
Yeah.
went to one of them. They went to one of them. He was more than happy to hand over a DNA
yeah.
sample.
He was like,
More than
yeah,
happy.
sure.
What do you want? I'll give you whatever you want. And it came back that it was... So when they obviously took all of Joanne's clothes and all of that on the night of the, of the event,
Incident. Yep.
of the suspected murder... forensically, they obviously looked at everything and they found a tiny, tiny, tiny blood spot on Joanne's T-shirt. And it pulled a DNA profile of a person unknown.
Yeah.
So
But it wasn't Joanne's and it wasn't Peter's. Yeah.
They know they had Peter's DNA profile not only from the blood on the ground, but they had other items of his that they were able to obtain a profile from.
Yeah.
So they had this third unknown DNA and it was blood. The
Yeah.
source was blood. So when they got the DNA sample from Bradley's brother, it came back as a familial match. So they're like, fucking
It's got to be him. Yeah.
Fucking bingo. In order to actually confirm that fully, though, they needed a DNA profile from Bradley, which is
Yeah.
what they got when they arrested him for the rape of the 12-year-old girl and I think her mother. But,
Yeah.
And in doing so, they 100% got a match that the blood on Joanne's T-shirt matched Bradley, John Edwards, and it was like 150 million
Murdoch.
to 1. Oh, Murdoch. Oh, my God. Wrong criminal.
Wrong one. They're too similar, the names.
It is. It's doing my head in, actually. I need to have it in front of me so I remember. And also my brain's a bit
Bit
mush
scatter.
at the moment. So having this DNA match meant that they could arrest him for the crime.
Yeah.
They had enough circumstantial evidence, and even though they didn't have a body, which no criminal at that point in Darwin had ever been convicted of a murder without a body yet. He was the first to undergo a trial with no body.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's incredible.
Well, I think also though that they always had bodies. Like there was because
Or they knew what happened.
Yeah.
As in, like, they were fed to a crocodile.
Yeah, Darwin's like the murder capital of Australia. Everyone thinks it's Adelaide, but it's actually Darwin. But it's because there's so many interesting characters. I mean, people, if you want to escape from somewhere, you go to Darwin. Have you been to Darwin before?
No,
it's a very interesting place.
Yeah,
yeah, because you're either in the military up there, like you're either in the army or you're coming through on a holiday. Mm-hmm. If you live there. Usually because you're escaping something.
Yeah.
They're very, very interesting.
People.
Very interesting.
Very interesting group of people.
Yeah.
Collection of people.
Yeah.
So, we're at the point where we're going to trial.
Well, yeah, but when they arrested him too, interesting what they found on him at the time was they found that he had a gun holder and wrapped around the gun holder was a hair tie. Now, in the kerfuffle of Joanne Lees escaping him, she had lost her hair tie.
And she said that in her original statement.
Her Mary Jane hair tie.
Lady Jane.
Lady Jane, sorry. Yeah. Lady Jane hair tie had been lost in the fight and everything of her getting away. And then oddly enough, on his gun holder, wrapped around it, was this Lady Jane hair tie.
To me, that's the clincher.
Yeah. Yeah, and everyone overlooks that.
Yeah, that's the thing to me that makes me go, oh, they've absolutely got the right guy. That was his little trophy.
Yeah, because that's the other thing with the blood on him as well. Like that how did that droplet of blood get there on her and match him entirely?
So people who support him, their excuse is that he was in Alice Springs on the same day as Peter and Joanne, and they both went to the same Red Rooster.
Yeah.
For lunch. Mm-hmm. Now, we know they were there hours apart.
2 hours between their visits.
2 hours apart. And it's not like anyone cut themselves. Or
they're like, so he must have had a bit of a cut on his hand and pulled a chair out, say, and sat down or whatever. And then she's come along 2 hours later.
Brushed up against
and the Red Rooster, where I'm sure there was many other people that between those 2 hours had maybe been in that same restaurant. She's then sat in that same exact chair that he pulled out, and that's how it's got on the back of her T-shirt. As she's leant back on the chair or something, this droplet of blood has got on. Wait, what? It didn't dry in those 2 hours, that small amount of blood? She didn't see it to go, oh, yuck, I'm not sitting on this chair. I don't know. Then what? Miraculously, she's done that and then gone off on her merry way and had this incident occur where she has described that exact person who happens to match that blood that she randomly brushed up against at a restaurant as being the perpetrator of that event.
But then the supporters for Bradley say that she had seen him around town in Alice Springs, and because he was such an imposing figure, because he's really tall, he's like 6'5".
Yeah.
He's really tall. So she's noticed him there. And then that's the image that was in her mind when this all happened.
Because you do look at him and go, you're a fucking murderer.
Yeah. I mean, he looks so scary.
There's these shots of him being put in a car at the court where he gets, I think it's when he was arrested. And they're trying to shove this huge man into this tiny little police car. The look on his face, he's angry as hell.
He's not happy.
He is not happy. But he's like giant lurch in this car. And the cops are trying to get him to move over so that someone else can sit next to him on the back seat. But he takes up the entirety of the back seat of this car.
He's not only tall, but he's broad. He's big. He's big.
Yeah. Oh, he's an imposing man. To come across him in the dark night of
terrifying.
That area. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
How she got away from him jeez.
God only knows what would have happened to her if she didn't.
Yeah, I can't buy into any of this stuff around that blood got there, inadvertently.
Nor can I.
Sorry, Nope.
No.
Even in court when he was asked in the trial, can you explain how your blood, matches onto the T-shirt? And he just went, no.
Yeah, that's right. He's got no.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God. So he was arrested in WA, wasn't he? And then extradited to the Northern Territory for the trial.
Yeah.
So that began in April of 2005. Yeah, it was very, very interesting, this trial, because I guess his defense tried to just put in any type of reasonable doubt that they could. The judge presiding was Brian Ross Martin QC, and he was the Chief Justice of the Northern Territory. Murdoch pleaded not guilty to charges of murdering Falconio and assaulting and attempting to kidnap Joanne. Lees, so Joanne had actually identified, in the lead up to the trial, had identified photographs, had identified Bradley John Murdoch through photographs.
Although, there was one particular one where she was back in the UK at this point when they actually arrested him.
Yes.
And so they arrested him and she saw something on the news. Right, so she's like,
She was
"Oh,
on
they finally
holiday.
got
She
someone."
was in Sicily or something,
Right.
wasn't she? I think when he was arrested.
Yeah, I believe someone's sort of gone like, "Hey, Joanne, like they've got someone for Peter's murder and everything," and she goes and looks at sees a news story, and there's a photo of Bradley Murdoch in that story. So then when she's brought out here to Australia, obviously to then be part of this trial, she was given pictures to say, do you think, line up kind of picture style of, to identify potentially Murdoch as being the guy, and she points to, yes, Murdoch, but she had seen the photos of him in that news story.
Her friend said when she saw the news story, friend says, and I guess it's her friend, but, her friend says as soon as she saw it, she went, oh, that's him.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, but in terms of it being able to submit it to courts, in terms of her, I do understand a defence picking that apart and going, well, she didn't identify Murdoch. She identified the guy she saw in the news story. Yeah. I do get that but I do believe also that her friend saying that.
Yeah.
It matched who she saw on, he matched all the descriptions of who he was at the time. He'd changed his appearance since and that sort of thing. But he matched who she described.
They also found Murdoch's DNA on the handcuffs. How can you explain that?
But did they?
Well, I think they did.
Well, to this day, that evidence would not have made it into trial.
No.
So that's been debunked, that science.
Yeah,
but
I'm just one I mean, they found something there that indicated that it could be his.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, maybe in this day and age it might be different and we would have had a definitive answer. But to me, I'm like, well, yeah. Yeah,
well, because, I mean, I know I've heard you say before, they can't make up a profile. Like if that profile's there, it's there. So that in my head, I'm like, okay, well, if they've found something, then it's strike number two. If you've already, the blood is a foregone conclusion to me,
for sure.
And then to find something that that's his profile, even if it's 1 in 10 to be his profile, that's closer than nothing.
That's right.
I have
It was just because they found such little DNA there.
Yes.
The other thing, and the glue, something to do with the glue of the tape or something degraded the profile or something.
Okay, right.
But then also his friend, the one who dobbed him in, what was his name? I can't remember. Ian.
Oh, no, I haven't got his name written down.
He also
Scumbag
said,
number 2.
Yes,
sorry.
He also said that he saw Murdoch would make these.
This is the other thing.
These cable tie handcuffs.
He had been seen to make that style of handcuff, and when I put the photo up, people will see. No, that's not something that everyone does.
No.
It's not. It's quite distinct.
And you're also not using that to tie up an animal or anything
no,
like that
he's
either.
used them before.
Yes.
He's made them before.
Yes.
Absolutely, people have seen them. Yeah, that was a yeah.
Oh, there's so much. All
Yeah.
right. So he was then, I guess, after the end of the trial, he was found guilty.
Yeah, the jury only took 5 hours to deliberate.
That says a lot too.
Yeah. Yep.
How long do you reckon the mushroom deliberations are going to go for?
30 minutes.
3 seconds? Sorry, keep going.
Even Karen Reed's took 21 hours.
Yeah.
Guilty. He was found guilty of the murder of Peter Falconio, and also assault and unlawful deprivation of liberty of Joanne Lees. So his sentence of imprisonment was a non-parole period of 28 years. So as you say, he's due for parole
2032, I think I said.
2032.
But he's expected to die this year, 2025.
Yeah. Now, Joanne says too, she sat in that witness box and was a very good witness at the trial. And she says that she stared him down the whole time. She was, she's an incredibly strong person, but she said the entire time he never looked at her. Now, I'm sorry, if you weren't guilty, you would have looked at her. Mm-hmm. He couldn't look at her. Nah, that's another nail in the coffin in my mind. I know that's not legal, but but I find that very interesting that he wouldn't look at her.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. Because he knows he's looked into her eyes before. He knows what he's done.
Mm-hmm. He's appealed a number of times, the sentencing and the conviction, and been rejected at every avenue. And unfortunately, as we say, Peter Falconio's body's never been found. So there's a possibility that this law that is possible to be brought into play is that no body, no parole. So currently Darwin don't have that as a rule that has to be followed, like similar to Queensland, who have actually employed that into their law for every case, which, sorry. My turn. Okay. So Queensland have got that in place for every case now that they no body, no parole. However, or is it Sydney? Sorry. Is it New South Wales or Queensland have that now?
No, in New South Wales, it's everyone.
Yeah, New South Wales, it's everyone. New South Wales
because of the Chris Dawson case.
Yes, Chris Dawson. So it's absolutely applied to every case. No body, no parole. That's a flat out rule. Every other state, I believe, in Australia, that can still be used. It's just not an absolute explicit. So the courts can use that and decide, well, you know what, with no body, there'll be no parole. So the thought process is that will probably come into play here if he makes it that far.
They have said, though, that if that law is chosen to be used on Bradley John Murdoch, he will be the first person in the Northern Territory to have had that imposed on his sentence, that condition imposed on his sentence.
Right.
But it is likely that that's what
will come
they
out.
would do. Let's hope he never even sees the light of day again.
Yeah, I mean, if Andrew Fraser's got anything to do with it, he'll get him out. Don't know that he will be free. He's dead still, though. But
good.
Yeah. He's real gung ho. I mean, did you watch that?
Yeah.
I actually couldn't watch all of it. I got frustrated. I was like, I can't have this.
Yeah.
Like it's
I didn't like it.
No, it didn't. There was too many holes in what they were presenting, to be honest. Like there were little aspects of it that I was like the guy at the servo in terms of maybe not being him, but I'm still like, still doesn't rule him out.
Yeah. So what you're referring to there is there was some CCTV footage that was released from a service station in Alice Springs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they're saying the police say that it's Bradley John Murdoch,
and that's evidence that he was in the area.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I guess supporters of Murdoch say that wasn't him because the person wasn't tall enough. See, he only comes up to this level on the truck and he should be at this level.
Nuts or something on the wheels.
Yeah,
there's 5 and on his truck there's 7 or something.
Something like that. So there's a few things there. But I mean, whether it's him or not him, people placed him in Alice Springs in different areas. So to me, the fact that whether he was or wasn't at that truck stop is a moot point anyway.
Yeah.
He was seen at the Red Rooster. There's CCTV footage of it.
His DNA is at the scene.
Yeah, he's there. He was there. That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
And to boot, he has a profile of someone who could do this.
Yes.
And it was July 14th.
Yeah, there's so many things that just add up to, it could not be him.
I really, honestly, I do believe it's him, and I do believe that the right person has been put in jail.
I agree.
For life for it. So rotten hell, because there's no way I want to come across him in a dark alley.
No way.
He's where he should be. Yes. I really do feel that.
Yep.
Yeah. Another one that I would suggest people go and watch, if you in any way, I think that Joanne Lees is lying, go and watch the 60 Minutes interview.
Yep.
Because I burst into tears a number of times watching that. If you thought that she came across as heartless or whatever in the original media stuff, and she didn't cry and that sort of thing in those interviews.
Neither did Lindy Chamberlain.
No, this is it. And people don't respond how you think they're going to respond in trauma, and we do need to be more careful of that. But in this 60 Minutes interview, which took place in 2017, the heartbreak for her of like not finding Pete is genuine.
Oh, she has never married.
No, she's
never had another relationship.
No.
She works as a social worker.
Yeah.
At her local county in the UK. She is basically a recluse. Like this has impacted her life so significantly.
Yeah.
You know, fuck off to anybody who says otherwise.
Yeah.
Like
she
is such a victim in this.
Yeah, definitely.
She is the victim. I mean, I know Peter is deceased, you know, and I really hope that his body eventually, or his remains, can be found.
Oh, yeah.
For the closure for his family and for Joanne.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, she lives with this every single day of her life.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's organised a memorial to be put up in the area as well. And it's this 4-metre high falcon, which really looks cool. And she wanted somewhere where people could go and, you know, be out there with that and think about Peter in that space, but also just somewhere where they can have a break on that road that can be quite long. And, you know, so that was really lovely that that's been put there now. But not only that, as we said at the beginning, her dad, who was Australian, which she knew he was Australian, but she had never met him. She ended up through her life has discovered that she has a sister, and her sister is Australian, and so she still comes out to Australia and obviously and visits. She has actually now got citizenship here for Australia, which she thought way back when all this took place that she'd never come back. But now she comes back regularly and has this real connection here with her sister, which is just lovely. And her sister's like 8 years younger than her.
They look so similar.
They do. They look identical. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's really got this big connection out here, and her sister's so lovely. And she's like, they were saying that her sister would have been like 18 or 19 when this occurred, but she wasn't even in Australia. She was actually traveling around herself. Like, they're so similar in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like that she was traveling overseas at the time, so she wasn't here in Australia when it happened. But she's now like so regretful that they know about each other. Because she was like, I wanted to be there for all of this for her, you know, and be there for the trial and be her supporter, because she didn't have many people around her. In that, you know, only limited people from Peter's family could even come out to be there for the trial.
I think Peter's mum and dad and one of her
brothers,
was the only one who came out. And so Joanne didn't really have that close family support. I mean, I think the Falconios were certainly supportive of her, and they understood what she'd been through and the trauma that she'd been through. But it's probably a bit different, you know, than having your own family or your own very close support network there.
Yeah.
And you know, Joanne had to be respectful as well of their mourning and you know, all of what they were going through.
How would you feel like thinking like, are they listening to the police who think that I had something to do with this? And that, I mean, they knew they never thought that, but you would still think to yourself of like, you know, but what if they did, you know, like, and you know, you would just, trying to manage all of that would be awful.
Yeah.
Just awful. So she's been through hell, like, you know, and it's, and as you say, it's impacted her entire life. It has changed her life path, that is for sure. From 1 minute thinking that, you know, on the holiday of a lifetime to then the planning and that they're going to get married and things.
With your whole future ahead of you.
Yeah.
I've also read criticisms of her for taking money for the 60 Minutes interview. She's only done, I think, 2.
She's not done much, that's for sure.
Interviews, and she did write a book.
Yeah.
But there's criticism for her taking payment for those interviews. I'm like, fuck off. The proceeds she used from one of the payments was to pay for that tribute to Peter.
Yeah.
And the other one was because she couldn't work for I
was going to say,
years.
She needs to pay for her therapy. I mean, she 100% needs very serious therapy.
Absolutely. Like, fuck off, people.
Yeah.
You know, of course she didn't want to have to profit from this.
No.
You know, nobody would want to be in this situation to then earn, I think it was like £50,000. That's not a life-changing amount of money. That might have supported her for a year or two. Like, fuck off.
Fuck off.
Stop being horrible to the victims.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Oh, awful.
I really feel for her, and I really feel for Peter's family, and I really hope that one day, I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but you never know. One day his remains may be found.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be really great to have that and just know what happened. Maybe get some answers from that. I don't know. Yeah.
Another long episode.
Yep. Getting longer and longer. I don't know what's going on.
Thank you to everybody for joining us again. We are very much looking forward to, you know, next week's episode. Have you looked up to see what we're doing?
I did. Dr. Death.
Dr. Death. Come at us, Dr. Death.
Yeah.
This is an interesting one.
I don't know that I know a lot about this one, actually. I feel like
Seriously?
I honestly, I haven't
The
looked
long
into this so
form.
much.
Oh, you're probably a bit late to listen to the long form podcast.
Yeah.
It's so good. But there's also a TV series.
Yeah. And it's got Joshua Jackson, hasn't it?
And love it.
So I'll be into that.
Fuck, I love him. Were you a Pacey kind of a gal?
Well, no. Okay, sorry, I'm a bit older than you. And Pacey, yes, but more so Mighty Ducks.
Oh, quack,
Quack, quack.
quack. We'll talk about this more next week. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment. We really, really appreciate it when people
Share
do
us
that.
with a friend. That would be amazing. Excellent. Stay curious, crime besties.
Bye.